The wind off the Chiricahua Mountains carried the smell of dust and creosote when Jake Harlan first saw the broken wagon. It was late September 1881, the kind of dry that made a man's tongue stick to the roof of his mouth, and the sun hung like a hot coin over the alkali flats of southern Arizona territory. Jake had been riding fence on his little 30-section spread when he spotted the lone wagon canted sideways in the dry wash, one wheel splintered clean through. A woman stood beside it, straight-backed, one hand on the neck of a half-wild Mustang hitched to the traces. She wore a faded calico dress, but the silver concho belt and the way she held the quirt told Jake she was Apache, probably from San Carlos or maybe one of the bands that still refused the reservation. He could have kept riding. Most men would have. The Apaches had jumped the reservation again that spring, and Geronimo's name was on every tongue from Tucson to the Rio Grande, but Jake had fought Comanche on the Staked Plain and Sioux up on the Powder, and he'd learned one thing: a man who leaves a woman stranded in desert country is no man at all. He tipped his hat. "Afternoon, Mom. Looks like you threw a wheel." She studied him with eyes the color of obsidian after rain. "It is broken," she said in careful English. "My brother is hunting. He will return after dark." "I can fix it before then," Jake said. "That got tools and a spare in my saddle roll." She didn't answer right away. Apaches didn't trust easily in white men, least of all. But the sun was dropping fast, and the desert turns cold quick once it does. Finally she nodded. Once. Her name, she told him, was Nahi, Little Trail Woman. The wagon carried her dead mother's things: blankets, a cracked mirror, 2 alas painted with lightning, and a small trunk bound with rawhide. She was taking them north to her husband's people in the Mogollon. Jake worked in silence, jacking the wagon, prying off the ruined wheel, fitting the spare he carried for his own freight rig. The iron tire was a hair too narrow, but he heated it cherry red in a fire of mesquite and shrank it on. Nahi watched every move. When he tightened the last linchpin, the shadows were long and purple across the sand. "You have good hands," she said suddenly. "Strong, but not cruel." Jake laughed under his breath. "My mother said the same when I was 10, and still breaking horses instead of hearts." Nahi smiled, then quick gone, almost before it happened, and offered him water from a canteen wrapped in willow bark. It tasted of sweet pine. He rode away as the first stars came out, figuring that was the end of it. It wasn't. Next morning, just after sunrise, Jake stepped out of his cabin with a cup of coffee and froze. 40, maybe 50 mounted Apaches ringed his place. War paint black and vermilion streaked their faces. Lances glinted. Rifles rested easy across their laps. The horses were loud. They'd ridden hard through the night. At their head sat a man on a claybank stallion, tall, raw-boned, a Henry repeater across his saddlebow. His hair hung in 2 braids wrapped with red trade cloth. A scar ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth like a lightning bolt frozen in skin. Jake set the coffee down slow, thumb near the Colt on his hip but not touching it. He'd faced death before, but never this many rifles at spitting distance. The scarred warrior raised one hand. The circle tightened, silent as wolves. Then Nahi rode through the line on her Mustang. She had changed into doeskin, beaded moccasins to the knee, and a crimson headband. She looked at the scarred man and spoke rapid Apache, too fast for Jake to follow. The warrior listened without expression. When she finished, he stared at Jake for a long minute that felt like an hour. Finally, he spoke. Voice low, English surprisingly good. "You've fixed my wife's wagon." Jake's mouth was dry. Seemed the neighborly thing. "My name is Daklugi," the warrior said. "Son of Jah. My wife says you worked until dark and took nothing. Not coffee, not silver, not even thanks." Jake shrugged. "Didn't do it for pay." Daklugi swung down. Every rifle tracked him. He walked forward until he and Jake stood eye to eye. Up close, the scar looked fresh, still pink at the edges. "In my band," Daklugi said, "when a man helps a woman of the people and asks nothing, it makes a debt. Apache do not like debts." Jake felt the sweat crawl down his spine. He'd heard what Apaches did about debts they couldn't repay. Daklugi reached to his neck and drew off a necklace turquoise and silver old Spanish work, heavy as sin. He pressed it into Jake's hand. "This belonged to my mother's mother. It is worth more than your cattle, more than your land. Now the debt is paid." Jake started to refuse, but something in the man's eyes stopped him cold. Pride, fierce and ancient. Instead he closed his fist around the necklace. "Much obliged." Daklugi nodded once, turned and remounted. The riders wheeled as one and thundered east, dust boiling up like red smoke. In 30 seconds the flat was empty except for the wind and the smell of horse sweat. Jake stood there a long time, the turquoise warm against his palm. 3 weeks later the army came looking. A lieutenant from Fort Bowie rode in with 20 troopers, all spit and polish and questions. Word was Geronimo had jumped the reservation again, and the trail led through Jake's range. Had he seen warriors, 40, 50, painted for war. Asterisk Jake poured the lieutenant coffee and said nothing about the necklace hidden under his bunk. He told the truth as far as it went. He'd seen nobody but a woman with a busted wheel. Asterisk the lieutenant wasn't satisfied. They tore the place apart, dumped flour, scattered tools, kicked over the stove. If I'm nothing. Finally, they rode off, cursing Apache-loving ranchers. Asterisk winter came early that year. Snow dusted the Dos Cabezas and Jake's cattle bunched up in the draws. One night in December, the temperature dropped so hard the stars looked close enough to touch. Asterisk Jake was banking the fire when someone knocked 3 measured raps in his door. He opened it with the Colt in his hand. Nahi stood on the porch, snow in her hair, a small child asleep against her shoulder wrapped in a blanket. Behind her, Daklugi held the reins of 2 horses, breath steaming in the lantern light. Asterisk we need shelter, Nahi said simply. The army is burning the wickiups on the San Carlos. They take the children. My husband will not give up our son. Asterisk Jake looked at the boy 3, maybe 4 years old, thumb in his mouth even in sleep, then at Daklugi who met his eyes without pleading, only waiting. Asterisk Jake stepped aside. Plenty of room by the fire. They stayed 6 weeks. Daklugi helped mend fences in exchange for beef and beans. The boy, whose name was Chapo, followed Jake everywhere, solemn and silent, learning to whittle with a broken knife. He cooked beans with chili and fry bread that melted in a man's mouth. At night, they spoke little. Words weren't needed. Asterisk one evening Jake showed Chapo the necklace. The boy traced the silver with a sticky finger. Asterisk my grandmother's, he whispered. Jake started to take it off, but Daklugi stopped him with a raised hand. It is yours now, he said. A man should keep what cancels a debt. Asterisk in February the weather broke. The snow turned to slush, and the arroyos ran bankful. One morning Daklugi saddled the claybank and tightened the cinch with care. Time, he said. Jake nodded. He understood. The mountains were calling, and a man like Daklugi could no more live penned than an eagle. Asterisk Na-IH hugged Jake quick and fierce. Chapo gave him the whittled horse he'd spent weeks on crooked ears. Proud neck, perfect in a child's eyes. Asterisk Daklugi offered his hand. Jake took it. Their grip lasted longer than words. Asterisk then they were gone. 3 shadows melting into the cottonwoods along the creek. Asterisk spring came green and sudden. The grass grew belly-high to a horse, and Jake's cattle fattened. In May, a company of the 6th Cavalry camped on his north pasture, asking the same tired questions. Jake gave them coffee and silence. Asterisk that fall he found a bundle on his doorstep at dawn. A new saddle blanket woven tight as a basket, colors of sunset and storm, and a Winchester 73 still smelling of bear oil. 30 rounds in the loops. Asterisk no note. None needed. Asterisk years slid by. The wars ended, or at least the shooting did. Geronimo surrendered in '86, and the Chiricahua was shipped to Florida, then Alabama, then finally Fort Sill. Jake read the newspapers and said nothing. Asterisk in 1905 a letter came, forwarded from the postmaster in Wilcox, who knew Jake never got mail. The handwriting was careful, educated. Mr. Harlan, my son Chapo is a cadet at Carlisle now. He wears the necklace you still keep. He asked me to tell you the little horse you carved him rides on his desk. He will be a doctor for the people one day. Asterisk the debt is old, but memory is long. Daklugi sends his respect. Na'i asterisk Jake read it twice, folded it small, and put it in the Bible he never opened otherwise. Asterisk he lived to be alone but not lonely, riding the range until his knees gave out. When he died in 1938, the Mexican woman who cooked for him found the turquoise necklace in a Prince Albacan under his bunk, along with a whittled wooden horse worn smooth by years of handling and a letter yellow with age. Asterisk she buried them with him, high on the hill above the home place where the wind never stops singing. Asterisk and if you ride that country today, up where the Dos Cabezas meet the sky, sometimes on certain evenings when the light is red and thin, old-timers say you can still see a tall man on a claybank horse and a woman in doeskin, riding beside a boy with a wooden horse tied to his saddle. Asterisk they are only shadows, moving fast. Asterisk but the Apaches say dead sand, the men who honor them never truly die.